stuff there. So it's a conversation, right, about the movie Critic. That's a novelization of my experiences, right, with Quentin Tarantino and the movie Critic, right? So these are the games that Quentin likes to play, right? That he likes to direct people with his mind, right? As espoused by Charles Manson on Pussycat in his book, right? Right? And so the daughter, right? It's all bullshit. Everything that I said, like it's really great writing, you know, like it's really like practical and like puts you into the moment, you know. But if you're paying attention, it's me trusting him that he has an adult daughter, right? Which he doesn't, right? Unless he does. He don't want to talk to me, but he doesn't, right? Because he told me he didn't have one, right? There's the board, right? I turned it all on him on New Year's Eve, right? About 50 pages, 44 pages, 43 pages from where we are now in that novel, Building Your Coven. And I said, oh, well, how about this? How about this? How about this? He said, oh, no. There's no daughter. I don't want you to, I don't want you to keep doing that. Right? Because he's not a dumbass. Right? And so the moment that I revealed myself, right, on the perfect minute, which was mentioned, right, 12:36, I didn't create it, there it is, hermetically sealed in numerical order. Right? When I put those two sigils over Allison's eyes, because he told me it was this girl, Allison Tarantino, right? Then when I did everything that I did, I just touched on just a little bit at the end of this book, right? Two interlaced pentagrams, right? Two 5-pointed stars, right? Inside of each other. They're like inverted. Boom, over both of his eyes. And Danielle's. Right? And so, right? It's hard to show you, but I'm going to show you just so that, you can understand what I'm saying. I got to mutilate my board just a little bit. Right? And so, this is our Emmanuel. I've talked about him any number of times, right? I cursed him, right? And everything that he did, right? He didn't do anything, right? But his ignorant supposition that Quentin is always telling the truth is the reason that he ended up on this piece of paper. But, yeah. So, what is that, right? That's a pentagram pointing up. And then there's another one inside of it pointing down. This is a little harder to see, but it's the same thing right here, right? And so they're collapsing, right, into his eye, right? And so it was one pointing up, one pointing down. It was 10 points on Quentin's eyes, right, as well as Danielle's, right? Because they're the ones that have been abusing me. But that bitch Allison, she don't know nothing about nothing, unless she does. Right? I've never given Ari the business end of this, just so that we're on the same page here. Right? But I told him explicitly, right, to a degree that I've never put on this channel. This is the game that you're playing at. This is the game that Quentin is playing at. Right? And so, me being on the street, right, in Tennessee, right, that's that's his finest hour with these tactics. That's my point. Right, that he got me to leave town. Right, oh, look how fucking strong I am. Right? Right? So, I suppose I'll stop. I don't really know what else to say. All of life is structured in a particular way. The things that Quentin does hearken to the true philosophy. Right? There it is. There's the sand. There's a line in the sand, pardon me. There's a sand line. Right? And that's, right, this thing, that line is your ignorance. You'll never circumvent it. You'll never get past it. Right? But you can stare at it. Right? And so in staring at it and saying, oh, I see you, I see, right, the dominion of my ignorance, right? That you can say, okay, I have a mind. I operate in the universe a particular way, right? And when I seek to express something novel, right, it begins in my mind and works downward, right, through the mouth, through the hands, right? This is the same way that the divine intellect manifests its knowing. Space is arranged in a particular way. The conscious awareness and resonance occupies every cubic centimeter of space forever in a state of rest. Inside of that is an infinite complex nesting of polyhedra, right? In the Copernican, right? In the Johannes Kepler sense, right? This is one example, a compound of 40 tetrahedra, 20 pointing up, 20 pointing down, right? With the vector equilibrium in the middle. And there's a bunch behind me as well. Right? That inside of that is the divine light of God, right? Which has no personality. It doesn't answer your prayers, right? That's the removal of hell is the removal of heaven, right? There's your ignorance, right there. When the divine light of God seeks to express its knowing, it thinks. And by thinking, if we take this as an example, it collapses the conscious field, which, if we say within this, Merkaba, star tetrahedron, right, stella octangula, right, that this represents all of manifested reality, right? And so we close this in a sphere, right? And if we say that the divine light of conscious awareness exists in every cubic centimeter within the sphere enclosing this, right? That eventually it seeks to express one part of it and begins to think and does so by contracting, right? So this geometry in the center, which is the vector equilibrium, right, is where all of this material, both structurally and metaphysically as spirit, begin collapsing towards, from out here into there. And so the dignity of God can pick any direction. Right? It doesn't have to go straight on top, straight on bottom, right? That this is, right? And the direction, right, the dihedral, they call it, the angle or angles, right, with which the divine light of God exerts pressure upon the quantum manifold, right, which exists with it in every cubic centimeter of space, infinite complex nesting of polyhedra, right, that however it decides, right, if it's right here, right, that expresses what it materializes as manifested reality in the physical measurable world, right? So two of them putting pressure right here at these vertexes that go through the volumetric center, right? Boom, right? That you exert that, right? And so that as it's squeezing these 2 points, right, two here in the middle, right, it's forcing other magnetic densities and effluvia into the surrounding areas. You understand what I'm saying right now? And so that as the excess material in its transposition from out here to the center, right, coagulates in the spaces around it, right, that engenders electric resistance as a result of space grating against itself, right? And so as these volumetric pressures are colliding with different locales, right, they're rubbing against each other, any sort of molecular material, or even just space itself, right? and engendering heat and resistance and electricity as a result of the collision of the two, right? And eventually, that condition becomes so dense, right? So pregnant, so to speak, right? With electric potential, right? That it can no longer remain in inert space and erupts into incandescence as matter, right? So when you push it from these two, right? Boom, right? Every point around it, this is where the matter is going to materialize. You understand what I'm saying? That the excess material from A to B through here, right, is ejected and pushed out to this vertex, this vertex, this vertex, right? And this is your nodes of electric resistance, right, which creates material matter, right? And so what does this have to do with Quentin Tarantino, right? All instances of clairvoyance, of psychic phenomenon, of remote viewing, as in the case of Quentin, is the mind of the adept, right? Tapping into and harmonizing their conscious awareness with the frequency of the divinity which exists in every cubic centimeter of space, right? So Quentin is a powerful psychic clairvoyant who remote views anyone he so chooses in his life, right? And so, right, when Quentin or me or anyone is remote viewing successfully, the first thing that you see is a crystal clear, boom, hologram, 3D image as though projected from a film projector or a digital projector. That's when you know, right? Right? And so the second thing that's occurring, the reason that can occur, right, is that the adept and the disparate locale have harmonized the behavior of the atomic structure of the atoms comprising their brain and body with the behavior of the atoms that comprise the area that they're viewing in their mind's eye. That's right, nothing else has ever been occurring. Right?